When do you die? Even if the love has totally gone cold, who can say something like this to his wife who's been told she has 6 months to live? I was beyond anger and shock. I was utterly dumbfounded. What? You're the one with limited time left. What? My name is Julia. I believe aging gracefully is an eternal goal for both men and women. I just turned 60, but I haven't forgotten to stay fashionable as a woman. Not for my husband. When I look in the mirror and see my hair, makeup, and outfit all perfectly put together, it gives me a buzz. At work, people are surprised to learn I'm 60, and it feels good when they say, "No way." My marriage has gone stale, and I often wonder why I married this man. I'm a hard-working editor at a weekly comic magazine. My husband isn't a big earner, yet he opposes me working. When men work, women should be doing house chores, he says with a straight face. I can only sigh with these words. It's like he time-traveled from the Stone Age. I want to tell him that even in the animal kingdom, it's the female lions that hunt. I find fulfillment in my job, giving advice to young aspiring comic artists with big dreams and working together to create captivating characters and engaging stories. People in their 60s are young these days. The days 60 years old living in retirement are long gone, or so I believe. But my husband thinks differently. How long are you planning to work? You're already 60. You're definitely being treated as a burden and useless at work. I was fuming, but if I get into an argument, my husband never backs down, so I end up being the one who gives in. That's not true. Today's 60-year-olds are performing as well as the younger employees. I won't tolerate you neglecting housework because of your job. My husband, who genuinely believes that housework is a wife's job, cannot be watching the news. He is the worst kind of chauvinist, thinking men should be dominant and women submissive, not to mention he has a weakness for young, attractive women. I graduated from college and landed my current job. I had a dream of becoming a comic book artist until high school, but I gave up because I didn't have the skills. That's why I support those who chase their dreams. I was so engrossed in my work that, before I knew it, I turned 40. Relatives approached me with matchmaking proposals, and I started dreaming of married life. Marriage is a significant life decision, so you shouldn't rush into it. But fearing I would be single for life if I missed this opportunity, I accepted a matchmaking proposal and had a blind date with my now husband, who was 41 at the time. Back then, my husband acted like a sweet gentleman, hiding his true colors so I couldn't see through him. As we both were over 40 and I had no intention of quitting my job, we don't have children. My parents are in their 80s, but unlike my husband, they seem to be in tune with the times and never pressure me by saying they want to see grandkids. There are many women who want children but can't have them. My parents understand that questions like when will we see our grandkids, and when will you have kids, can be burdensome. Lately, my husband is often on his smartphone, and he whispers during calls. I wondered if he might be cheating, but realizing that I'm not even mad probably means that I've fallen out of love with him. One day, my mother-in-law, who lives nearby, came over to our house. Her husband passed away 3 years ago, and she now lives alone. My mother-in-law is 85 but always so composed, and my husband is no match for her. It's not out of respect, probably more about wanting her wealth. That old witch is such a penny pincher. She must have around 200 grand saved up. I have no siblings, so I'll inherit it all. Can't she just kick the bucket already? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. There are things that are okay to say and things that are not. Gotta play nice, or she might leave all her money to some charity in her will or something. At that moment, his mother came from the next room. Sorry for being such a cheapskate, she said. Mom! My husband's face turned pale, and he unfairly lashed out at me with fury. You idiot! Why didn't you tell me she was here? Shut it! Keep it down, you're disturbing the neighbors. There was no way to deny the horrible things he'd said, so he hung his head in silence. While my husband was taking the shower, my mother-in-law talked to me. How long have things been rocky between you two? This doesn't seem like a normal slump. It seems quite serious. I smiled wryly and said, "You noticed?" "Listen, Julia. If you really can't take it anymore, divorce is an option. There's an old saying about the suffering of loathing someone you're stuck with. It's unbearable. There's no need to consider me in any of this." My mother-in-law's kindness touched my heart. She is wise, cultured, and refined, nothing like my husband. I can hardly believe they are related. My husband must be some primitive man who time-traveled here. This year, my husband had his annual physical at work, but something seemed off. At 61, his unhealthy lifestyle might be catching up with him. He often comes home late and drunk. He claims he was out with coworkers at a bar, but I know he's been going to strip clubs. He shouldn't underestimate a housewife's intuition. My husband had a follow-up at the hospital, and one day the doctor called. The doctor said, before we talk to him, we'd like to discuss something with the family. It felt like something out of a soap opera, and I had a bad feeling. What the doctor told me at the hospital shocked me. He only has 6 months to live? The news that my husband had only 6 months left hit me like a ton of bricks, and my emotions were all over the place. I was surprised that I didn't feel more shocked, felt a little pity, almost felt relieved, but then felt guilty for feeling that way. Most wives would be devastated, but I found myself putting on an act to look more upset than I really was. Could there be some mistake? I'm afraid not. Please brace yourself. Whether or not to tell him depends on his personality, and since you know your husband best. What do you mean by personality? If he's the type to become despondent and reckless, it might be dangerous to break the news suddenly. If he has a positive attitude and strong will to live, it might be better to tell him. If my husband hears he only has 6 months to live, I can see him becoming reckless. But going to strip clubs just because he has no symptoms, and continuing to drink is not a good idea. I returned home with a heavy heart, but I concluded that I must tell him. When my husband came home at night, I spoke. "Honey, we need to talk." "What's with the drama?" "I'm busy, unlike you." "I'm busy too." "You make yourself busy. If you don't like being busy, quit your job. It's a man's shame to have his wife work. It's as if I don't make enough." I was taken aback by how outdated my husband's mindset was. He doesn't seem to know that in most households both spouses work nowadays, and stay-at-home wives are less common. I went to the hospital today. The hospital? Please, listen calmly. Stop beating around the bush. I told you I'm busy. I blurted out in frustration. Doctor said that the remaining life is 6 months. For a few seconds, my husband stared at me with a straight face, then burst into laughter, and covering his mouth with his hand. 6 months to live? Yes. Calm down, don't become reckless. Idiot, who do you think would become reckless? Don't get ahead of yourself or underestimate me. My husband was talking nonsense, probably due to the shock. Well, it's karma. Such a reckless life leads to that result. I was surprised that he was self-aware. So, you should stop drinking so much alcohol. Shut up. For a businessman, attending a drinking party is part of the job for good relationships. Only women would think that drinking means playing around. I'm going to keep going out drinking. You should stop. Come straight home after work. Then my husband grinned from ear to ear. Wait a second, don't tell me you want to spend more time as a couple because there is only 6 months left? I didn't want that at all, but I had to play the part of the dutiful wife. Of course, I want us to spend more time together. Don't be stupid, I don't have that kind of time. Honey. But he cut me off. All right, end of discussion. Time is money and it's a waste to spend it with you. I was amazed at how easily he could say something so hurtful. But it might be just a reaction to the shock, so I didn't say anything more. I was worried about how he was taking it and sneaked a peek at him in his study. He was talking to someone on the phone. Hi, Miley? Well, I wouldn't exactly call it good news, That would probably be bad karma, but my wife apparently was told at the hospital today. She only has 6 months to live. I didn't ask what the diagnosis was, but if they're talking 6 months, it's probably late-stage cancer or something. At first, I didn't understand what my husband was saying. It's just 6 months of putting up with this. I have life insurance on my wife, and my mother is 85, so she'll probably kick the bucket soon too. Once my wife is gone, Miley, let's live together. I want to start my life over. I was shocked. My husband misunderstood the fact terribly. But my anger reached its peak when I heard a conversation with a woman called Miley. I am very unwilling to tell the truth. He can't even make fun of people. I will not allow him to talk like that even to his own mother. I muttered in a voice so chilling that it gave even me the shivers. Well, go ahead and live the rest of your life with that misunderstanding. Though by a lifetime, I mean 6 months. After I told him about the limited time, my husband not only came home late but often didn't come home at all. He lied about business trips and went on vacations. It's shocking. My husband started dressing flashy, buying expensive watches, and seemed to be partying literally every day. He was also buying loads of gifts. It's not like my husband is rolling in dough. Is he counting on the life insurance money after my supposed demise? He's lost all decency as a human being. 3 months have passed since the life expectancy news. I asked my husband, who looked pale. Are you feeling unwell? I've been feeling sluggish lately and get tired easily. I get winded just climbing the stairs at the station. Guess I'm getting old, huh? You should cut back on the booze. Buzz off. I told you, drinking is part of the job when I'm entertaining clients. If you've got nothing to say but depressing crap, then drop dead already. That really ticked me off, but I purposely didn't argue. Nagging women are the worst. You and that old woman should just drop dead. Behind my husband, who was spewing abuse, stood his mother. You talking about me when you say that, old witch? Whoa! You startled me. My husband shot me an angry glare, but my mother-in-law asked again. You calling me a old witch? No way, I've never called you a old witch, Mom. I have this annoying boss at work named Ms. Wiz. Ah, Ms. Wiz. My husband couldn't meet his mother's suspicious gaze and looked down. My husband, who wanted to complain that I purposely didn't tell him that my mother-in-law was here, went off somewhere. 4 months have passed since the life expectancy news. My husband was coughing more, taking more time off work, and, though he used to have high blood pressure, now he has low blood pressure. He's dizzy from low blood pressure and almost fell down the stairs. And still, he goes on his business trips. I'm disgusted. So, he chooses to spend his final days with a mistress instead of his wife. However, the fact that he's gallivanting with his mistress while believing his wife only has a few months to live is utterly disheartening. My husband says his hands and feet are cold even on warm days, and he complains of pain everywhere. If you're not feeling well, you should turn down the business trips. Don't tell me how to do my job. The business trips are the only thing I look forward to, they're important assignments only I can handle. Should I call your office and ask your boss to excuse you from the business trips? As expected, my husband's face turned red as he shouted. Try it, and see what happens. I will never forgive you. I had to stifle my laughter. I can only feel pity for my husband who brought this upon himself, but I am torn about whether to tell my mother-in-law the truth. She has been good to me since we were newlyweds. Then, an unexpected visitor arrived. A young woman I had never seen before. May I ask who you are? My name is Miley. Nice to meet you. Could it be Miley is my husband's mistress? She had the audacity to come to our house. I was ready to fight. I'll cut to the chase. Please set Mike free. Set him free? I asked, genuinely surprised by this young lady. Even for a woman like me, Miley was strikingly beautiful, petite, with a great figure, and a flawless sense of fashion. I couldn't fathom why a woman as enchanting as her was involved with my husband. My husband isn't rich, so she's not after his money. And it's hard to believe it's true love. So, is this some sort of scam? Mike is suffering. I think it's due to stress. Would you consider divorcing him? She asked. I couldn't help but smirk at her audacity, and I retorted. What you're doing is crossing a line, darling. Isn't it terribly inappropriate to approach a man's wife like this? But she wasn't fazed at all. You know, sometimes you meet your soulmate after you're already married. It's foolish to stay bound by marriage in such cases. We only have one life to live. That's when it hit me. I needed to end this conversation before I lost my cool and did something I might regret. So, I cut her off with a smile. He's been set free from this earthly realm, so no worries. But whether he's in heaven or took a nosedive to hell, I'm not the Grim Reaper, so I wouldn't know. She looked confused for a moment and then laughed heartily. You're hilarious with the Grim Reaper joke. I'm not one bit funny. How old are you, by the way? I'm 29. 29, still in her 20s. It almost made me dizzy. He was seeing a woman more than 30 years younger than himself. I couldn't hide my astonishment. If you don't mind, what do you do for a living? He came to the place where I work. He's very kind, a really good man. So, you're genuinely dating with my husband? Absolutely. Mike's strong and skilled. Stop. I interrupted, glaring at her with a smile. Say another word and I might just have to strangle you. She laughed. I'm serious, it's not funny at all, I scolded her. She fell silent for a few seconds, staring at me, then spoke. I have to say, I'm genuinely surprised. You're nothing like I imagined from meeting you today. Did he talk trash about me? Say I'm a witch or something? Miley burst into laughter again. No, he never said anything bad about you. But honestly, I didn't expect you to be such a wonderful person. I'm not desperate enough to feel flattered by a mistress's compliment, but I began to feel that Miley might not be so bad. I was determined not to like her, but with a woman like her being kind, any Neanderthal of a man would fall head over heels. So, it's true love, huh? But soon you'll find out if your feelings are real. What? She tilted her head adorably. I don't have any lingering feelings for my two-timing husband, but I felt a tinge of sympathy for this girl. 6 months have passed since the terminal diagnosis. My husband, looking pale, took another day off work, while I returned from work full of energy. Seeing me like this, he sneered. When are you gonna kick the bucket, with a chuckle. How could he say that to his wife, who he believes has only 6 months to live? I kept my anger in check, staying calm. Seriously, you and my mother are like cockroaches, just never giving up. Leave me out of it, but you better not badmouth your mother. I snapped. Suddenly, my husband flew into a rage, yelling. Who do you think you're talking to? Ah, I see, you've got nothing to lose. Well then, let me give you a piece of my mind before you croak. Marrying you was the biggest mistake of my life. The final words that should never have been said. My husband finally crossed the line. I felt a pillar of rage rising through me, and I blurted out. Is that your last will and testament? Last will? Hold on, you didn't write some weird will, did you? Did you write a will? It's been 6 months since the terminal diagnosis. What the heck are you talking about? You're the one with the terminal illness. Have you finally lost it? I was beyond angry and shocked. I was dumbfounded. Huh? The terminal diagnosis is yours. What? My husband's face froze for a moment, then he burst into mocking laughter. You really need to be hospitalized. You're not making any sense. Get to the hospital today. With that, he stormed into his study. The next morning, I found my husband collapsed in the house. I immediately called an ambulance and informed my mother-in-law before heading to the hospital. After the examination and discovering the truth, my husband lost it, yelling at me in front of the doctor and nurse. Why the hell didn't you tell me something this important? I did, 6 months ago. Stop lying. You're the one with the terminal illness. Whether he remembered our conversation from 6 months ago or not, he was in shock. I never actually said who got the terminal diagnosis. I see, you kept quiet about your mistake. Are you the devil? This is a hospital. Please keep your voice down. Shut up, all of you. Are you in cahoots? He was pointing fingers at the doctor and nurse. It was chaos. My husband was in a frenzy. Enough, I won't be admitted to a hospital that sets me up like this. They might assassinate me. You're exaggerating. Shut up. How can I trust any of you? He shook off the nurse trying to restrain him and stormed out of the room. I had no intention of stopping him from the beginning. I apologized to the doctor and nurse for my husband's disrespectful outburst on his behalf and went home. A few days later, a pale-faced husband returned. When he told Miley the truth, she apparently broke up with him. I couldn't help but think of Miley's face and thought, I guess it was intolerable for her after all. It would have been better if she just broke up with him, but Miley was married. It's not uncommon for club hostesses to lie about being single while married. It seems Miley's husband was in prison and recently got out. When Miley's affair came to light and her husband confronted her, she spilled the beans about my husband. Help me! He's threatening to throw me into the sea alive. Even if I said I'd help, how am I supposed to rescue you from such a scary guy? You're so calm even though your husband's in danger. Who are you to say that? Maybe you should flee the country? I don't have the money. Turns out, he spent all his savings counting on insurance money 6 months later. With his frequent business trips, or rather, vacations with Miley, and probably spending all the money, it's not surprising that he ran through a fortune in a short time. Please, can you lend me some money? I don't have any. I said, pushing him away coldly. Can you borrow some from my mother for me? She won't lend me anything, she's such a cheapskate. You could borrow from Ms. Wiz. What? Just like in a comic strip, my startled husband glares at me. I've told you time and again to let me know in advance when she is coming over. Are you doing this on purpose? You, on the other hand, were given 6 months to live. Oh, that was half a year ago, so your time is almost up, isn't it? I was taken aback by this callous remark, but my husband was even more dumbfounded by the unbelievable words from his mother. Is that something you say to your own son? How many times have you said the lines that no one would say to a real mother? My husband was speechless at this blow. Mike, apologize sincerely to Julia. We'll talk after that. My husband couldn't swallow his pride until the very end and shouted. This is my house. Get out. I don't want to see your faces anymore. Julia, let's go. What? Mike, I am disappointed in you. I am cutting ties with you as mother and son. I will live with my daughter. Daughter? My husband doesn't have any siblings. I was shocked, wondering if she had a secret child, but my mother-in-law said, Julia is my daughter. Do you have a problem with that? Mrs. Miller. My husband's eyes widened at these unexpected words. I was on the verge of tears, but somehow held them back. My mother-in-law and husband are blood-related. If my husband and I divorce, my mother-in-law and I would be strangers. But his mother called me her daughter. Ever since we got married, I felt it. She treasured me like her own daughter. Her love was genuine. My husband, now pale, glared at his mother. What the hell are you saying? I'm your biological son and she's just a daughter-in-law. Isn't it obvious who you should value more? Of course, without a second thought, I choose my real daughter, Julia. A man who cheats and shows no remorse is not my son. Whether my husband felt the firm resolve in his mother's words or not, he silently walked away like a ghost and went into his study. I quickly packed my things and started living at my mother-in-law's place. Thankfully, I had a job and, like my husband said, My mother-in-law had some savings. With my mother-in-law's advice, I officially divorced and cut ties completely with him. I wonder if he'll be alright, as he brought this on himself. It scares me that I can coldly think about whether some thugs will get him or something else. Instead, I worry if Miley will be okay. I don't know if this was the right thing to do. Marriage is when two strangers live together, so love is what's most important. When love fades, everything crumbles quickly. But I don't think this marriage was a mistake. I met my mother-in-law. We continue to get along like real mother and daughter and have happy days. My parents were surprised at first, but when I told them about the rough 6 months, they understood. I am happy now. Happiness is not something that is given by others. It is something you have to earn. When men meet their fiancé's parents, they often say, "I swear I will make your daughter happy." But it's not about having a man make you happy. The source of happiness is within oneself. There is infinite potential in my heart. I will live, believing in my own strength,